for marketplace founders, there's always this battle between long-term and short-term thinking, right? Setting high goals and pressure to see success incentivize the pursuit of short-term gains, but that often comes at the expense of long-term success. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Our featured guest today is Gabriel Isserlis, the founder CEO of Tutti, a UK-based marketplace. It's for creative people to find spaces for recording videos, photo shoots, rehearsals, recordings, all that kind of stuff. And man, it's a great idea. And so I'm excited to have you on to talk about just the short-term versus long-term thinking. And yeah, so I guess my first question for you, Gabriel, is what's the right balance between short-term and long-term thinking for a founder? How should they be thinking about that?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I didn't say anything in there, so I should say it. But short-term and long-term thinking. Okay, so to step back really quickly and say, I am not an expert. I'm a first-time founder. These are my gut feelings. I don't have any proof points yet because I haven't seen if my long-term thinking has worked out yet. But I'm of the belief that a lot of young founders don't think long-term enough. They look for short-term wins. That's most obvious in marketplaces when people are frantically trying to make sure that people don't disintermediate. So as a founder, I am trying to build a service that is useful to people and improves their lives. There are a number of competitors in our space who are doing very similar things to us, but they get upset anytime that someone gets frustrated with their platform and wants to go around them. Like, yes, we're young platforms. We don't have all the tools. Like, ours has a negotiation system where people can edit the cost constantly. There are some others that don't have that, and they've gotten really frustrated when some of the venues that are on both of our platforms have tried to simplify things by messaging directly and agree price off platform and then come back and use the platform again. We don't do that. In order to be as useful as we possibly can, we enable people to share personal details through our site, and we also don't hide brands so that if people need to, they can go around the platform. But this is very much long-term thinking. It is hurting us right now. Like, of course it is. Like, people love to disintermediate. And yeah, it sucks a number of times. But when you're building a long-term goal marketplace, the one key thing that I kept on being told by an advisor or a number of advisors early on is you need to build habits. You need to build the habit that people will keep thinking about you. And if you make the process as stupidly easy as you possibly can for them, then they'll be like, oh, that was a nice, easy process. Let's go do that again. And that's how you start building a habit. Whereas, yeah, young founders often will be like, no, but I need the revenue. I need that 1% to show that I'm a valuable company. So, but of course, taking all of this with a grain of salt, because we've only raised a tiny amount of money, so we haven't had to go and prove to loads of investors that we are value by having them look at our revenue, which is not much because we allow for this. We're going for value over revenue, which is a very distinctly American way of doing things, even though we're based in the UK.
Yeah, I think that there's always this pressure that you would feel when you are trying to demonstrate to VCs or investors or internally to your executive team, however it is, you're trying to demonstrate success and the viability of your platform, and so there's this pressure to demonstrate it very quickly and to show that we have profit, we have revenue, and because of that, that pressure sometimes incentivizes this, like, what are we going to do to get business tomorrow? And and the conundrum is that the things that build the best experience for your workers don't really incentivize business or for your workers, for your customers, for your users on your app, I should say. Um, all of those things don't incentivize like doing the best thing for tomorrow or
Yeah.
bringing in the revenue tomorrow. But they do end up bringing around the revenue 1 year from now, 2 years from now. So if you think about habit building, like it takes time. And so
Yeah.
instead of thinking about tomorrow, you kind of have to think to the future and say, we may be taking a hit tomorrow, but we're building it up. So that's I love that you
Yeah.
kind of bring that up there.
But it's so tricky as well because on the flip side, as a startup, you have to survive. So you have to find
Yeah.
ways that you are providing value for the long term, but you're also going to be able to survive in the short term. As a potential high growth startup, um, the classic way of staying alive is funding.
Mhm.
And so we have to somehow find that really tough balance of, do we have enough, are we providing enough value, and are we getting enough of the right metrics to be of interest to people who will give us that money for through funding, but are we also providing enough value that people want to keep coming back? Which I guess that is one metric: retention, people to come back and
Mhm.
once they've used the platform and enjoy it, use it again, whether we capture the revenue or not. um, but yeah, it was such a tricky balance. It's so hard.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a couple, examples of what long-term thinking can look like and what it's led to for you specifically as you're building Tutti. Like, do you have any other ideas of what does long-term thinking look like and what's behind it?
One of the things, one of the really tricky things with, again, long-term thinking is, as a young startup, it's another catch 22. You Well, one way that we're thinking long term is we're building our own tech. So I heard a number of young startups who didn't get funding or didn't get like seed funding
Hmm.
because they were still relying on no code platforms. So uh, we relied on no code for the first year, and then we used no code to prove that there was enough of an interest in what we were building. And then during the pandemic, actually, we used the time of the pandemic to build our own system, which I realize not everyone has. Um, but yeah, long term, the having to build your own system, that is very much a long term process, or long term thought, because like yeah, it's you need a small product that you can get out there really quickly for short term, and you need to prove it as quickly as possible. For anyone who's listening who's considering starting a marketplace, I just want to share ShareTribe is the go to place I would suggest. They You can set up a marketplace on their platform in 4 hours, which we did. But then there's the balance of, once you've proven it, then you have to somehow switch from that initial proof point, initial MVP, through to a much longer term potential.
So I want to dig in a little bit more into why it's important to allow people to take communication off of your platform, or whether it's right for everybody to do that, for every marketplace to allow that. So just what brought you to make the decision to make that possible, and what does that look like for you? Could you explain a little
Yeah.
bit more about that?
So disintermediation basically means, for anyone who's unsure of that massive word, it basically means that people go off of your marketplace and talk around behind your back. And very often it means to missed revenue, or it leads to missed revenue. Um, all of our competitors in this space do not allow for disintermediation. They block phone numbers, emails, anything that's shared in chat. Like, a lot of people have used Fiverr. You can't share your email or your phone number in Fiverr, just like that, in their chat system. And if they catch you doing it, then they will they'll say that you're no longer welcome on the platform. Um, that is disintermediation, like restrictive disintermediation. Whereas what we've done is, I guess, those platforms, they're all marketplaces. They're pure marketplaces. So the only way that they make money is by taking commission on when a booking goes through their platform. What we're doing is slightly different. We used to be a pure marketplace, but our new focus is software. So we're building software similar to OpenTable for the venues that are listed on our site. And this software helps them receive bookings on Tutti, but then also to keep track of all inquiries, whether they come from Tutti or from like their website, their social media, or anywhere else that they get them. And it contains a CRM that's specifically built for this industry and a few other things. And in order to be, well, the main focus of this software is, one, it'll be a monthly recurring revenue model, which will be nice. And two, it's to make sure that we're providing as much possible value to our venues as possible. And if that means that they get found on Tutti, but then they go off platform to go and communicate, it's okay, because our system is still managing all of their inquiries in some way, shape, or form. Yes, we might not get commission on that. We will try and charge commission if there's any customers that we introduce to them for the first time. But as we'll be helping them with all inquiries, we'll be able to know that. And yeah, where it's not relevant, we will not charge commission. That's how we're kind of dealing with the disintermediation problem. The reason we want it to be different, well, one, I love providing as much value as possible, but two, like, in order to stand out in a crowded market, which this is getting close to being, then you have to be outstanding, quite literally. You have to stand out. And this is the way of doing that. This is one way of doing that. Here, everyone is doing it one way, you do it a different way. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've heard a lot of people say that the word value is overused, and I've written, in the past, and I've said in the past, I strongly disagree with that. Granted, there's so many words I feel like in the marketplace space and really in every business space that are just like, stop saying this. It's just overused. It's just become a platitude. But providing value and giving the most value to your customers, I mean, it's so basic, but it is so fundamentally true. And so I really love the idea of providing value and seeing people and companies like yours go all in and say, it doesn't matter what it looks like, we're going to be the company that provides the most value for our
Yeah.
users. I've also seen recently that I think it's trending that marketplaces are realizing that there is revenue to be found and there is value to be provided, and being more than just, like you said, a pure marketplace, a connection of two parties, but in enabling one side of your marketplace, usually the supply side, as building a SaaS enablement tool or of some sort into your app. And so I'd love to hear how you came to decide to do that and how that was built out for 2D.
Yeah, so there's a lot of classic stories, OpenTable being probably the most prominent one, of companies being like, we want to build a marketplace, but marketplaces are incredibly hard and like expensive to scale, and so we're going to build a tool to start with, and then the marketplace later. We weren't that we weren't that aware of what we were doing, or didn't have that foresight ourselves. So we went the hard route and we built the marketplace first. But it is quite good, actually, that we did that, because if I had tried to build a tool the day that I actually built the marketplace, it would look utterly different, and I'm not sure if it would be very helpful to people. So we spent 3.5 years self-funding the marketplace, and after we kind of grew, when we focused on sales, we were like, oh yay, we can grow quite quickly. If we raise some money, we can grow faster. And we went and tried to raise some money and got nowhere. So we were trying to raise purely for the marketplace. And then during that 6 months that we were trying to raise, we started talking to our customers a lot more. We were just like, what else can we do? Where is there potential here? And we also talked to some of our investors or potential investors, and said, hey, um, what are we missing? And often it was like monthly recurring revenue or clear ways to scale. And with the marketplace, yes, you can scale, but it's incredibly expensive. Um, the A lot of our competitors are just spending so much money on ads, and they have millions in the bank to spend, and we have, well, at the time we had nothing. Um, so we went to our venues and our artists, and we started talking to them a lot more, asking a lot more questions. And I don't remember exactly who it was who pointed it out or when it came out, but a couple of them were talking about how they run their businesses. And they mentioned, oh, yeah, I use my spreadsheets to track payments. I use my spreadsheets to track inquiries. I use spreadsheets to track this. I was like, is there any software that you use? Nope, spreadsheets and Google Calendar. And I was like, okay, that 5 of you have said that. Is that a trend? And I started asking more and more and more of them. And I found out between 85 and 90% did not have any sort of software backing them up. They had Google Calendar, and spreadsheets, Google Drive. Some of them don't have CRMs. Some of them don't know what CRMs are. One of them who had a CRM, it was Google Drive using a Google Doc as every individual customer, and the Google Doc's name was the customer, and then inside the Google Doc was every interaction they'd ever had with that customer. So yep, that was a that's one of our more high tech venues as well. There's another one that is used by a number of massive brands that you've heard of, and I asked them about their calendar on their booking system, and they took me into their office and they showed me their calendar, which was 3 whiteboards on the wall with calendars laid out on them, and then their invoices system was a notebook in the desk. And I asked them how they manage inquiries when they're not in office, and they were like, we miss loads, but we don't have any digitized system. And I was like, why not? Is there not a system out there? And they said, oh, we've used this one product before for it, but it didn't really work. And I looked at the product, and it was calendar management for post-production houses so that they could figure out the editing schedule. And I was like, of course that's not going to work. That's not built for venues. So we started talking to more and more venues, asking them, why don't you use software? And it came back that the ones that had, well, a lot of them hadn't found anything that worked. The ones that had found something that might work, it often wasn't reliable, which is a pretty base level, low bar that you have to hit. You have to be reliable as a software provider. They said they kept losing calendar items. I'm like, that's not okay. And yeah, they were just frustration after frustration. I guess one key thing that I got brought up yesterday by a VC was, why doesn't instant booking work for them? And the fact is, yes, some of these spaces can be instant booked, but creative bookings have so many requirements. They're like, do you need good acoustics? Do you need soundproofing? Do you need chairs? Do you need equipment, power, drive-in capability, food on site? Loads and loads of extra little things. I've just listed barely the top of them. And sometimes it's easier just to get on the phone and chat. But instant booking systems are not meant for super complicated requirement systems. They're like, we book the space, pay £5 or pay £50, cool, done. And creative bookings are just not like that. So we're optimizing the technology to make it a lot faster to make these bookings, but we're not optimizing for instant booking yet. Because our venues, we offered instant booking to some of them, and they were like, please no, we don't want that. We want to be able to choose who comes in and who doesn't. So.
Right. I mean, pretty much everything you just said is a great example of knowing your customers and your users really well.
Yeah.
Knowing them really well leads to understanding how you can build things that give more value to them uh, and in the end increase profit for you as you enter into this additional business model that you've added on. And so that's great. I love these that comes from having those conversations that are key with your customers. One other thing I wanted to mention is just some advice from young founders that you've given from your experience as a young founder. Um, you get a lot of advice, and so I just want your take on how should young founders think through the advice that they are given.
It is a really, really tricky one. As a young founder, you will be given so much advice from so many people. Most of those people are not in a position to give advice because there are so few people who have built successful businesses. Um, or it's so few people who have tried to build businesses in general. Anyone who has not tried to build a successful business, or sorry, anyone who has not tried to build a business is not in a position to give you advice. Doesn't matter how qualified they are in their field, building a business is different. Um, and also, it's different for every person. So I am not qualified to give a lot of business advice to people starting food companies or biotech companies that I don't know anything about that field. But I can give practical advice on kind of how to start up, how to find a good accountant because I failed at that, how to set up a company at the right time because I failed at that, like how to set up your first business account or bank account, failed at that. There's like loads and loads of things that I've tried and failed to do, and then learnt and then done them correctly that I can give good advice on. But it's really hard. Like there's no easy way to figure out what advice is bad and what advice isn't until you're able to learn like how to trust your gut. And especially young founders, like older founders might be, when I'm talking about old and young, I'm not talking about experience, I'm talking about actual age. Because older founders may have been in the workforce longer and they may have come across loads of people who are full of crap and they have learned to tune those out and figure out what those people look like and how to trust their gut. I started Tutti almost essentially out of university, and I had not had that real world experience of, well, yes, there were loads of people full of crap at my university, but I hadn't figured that out when it really mattered to me in building my own company or working in the workforce. So I spent a lot of time getting poor advice, following it, regretting it. And then when I got really good advice, I often didn't know it was good advice at the time. And then I kept going on my own gut. And then 3 months later, was like, oh, that was good advice. I should have taken that. And now I know for the future. So it's a lot of, you will screw up, you will take the wrong advice, but it's not the end of the world. The only thing I would say is, at least in the early stages, never ever like promise anyone who gives you like 5 minutes of advice money or equity. It is simply not worth it. The good advisors know that they will provide value to you. There's the word again. They will provide value to you before you turn around and say, you can have some of my company equity or I can pay you. I give out a lot of free advice right now, and partly because I just want to build relationships and continually like help people. But the plan is in the future I might start charging a couple people like very small amounts of equity for advice. On that point, there is actually an agreement from my incubator, Founder Institute, called, I think it's the FAST agreement, but I think that might be YC's agreement. There's an agreement. If you type in fi.co advisor agreement, that is quite literally, it breaks down into sections how much time an advisor is willing to give at what stage of a company and how much equity they should get in exchange, and is the most useful document when you're really early on, because you can be like, oh, this person gave me 10 minutes of advice, that's worth nothing. This person gave me 2 weeks of their time every month last year, that is worth, like, I don't remember the number, but it's worth quite a lot. Um, and it's a really, really useful document. So check that out. But yeah, advice. You have to take loads of terrible advice, kiss a lot of frogs, and eventually you'll start to learn what advice you like and who you can trust. But
Yeah.
it's not easy.
That's good. I mean, it's kind of, at times like finding a needle in a haystack. Um, but you have to do the hard work of like the good advice is worth the hard work of sifting through to
Yeah.
find it. So yeah, I love that, man. So if we were to take all of this and boil it down, what's the biggest thing that you want marketplace leaders to take away from everything that you've learned, everything we've talked about today?
Um, that's a hard one. I guess if it's market if it's marketplace leaders, then they probably know everything that I've said already. If it's young people who are or like soon to be marketplace founders, then it's a slightly different question. Um, I think I'll target the soon to be marketplace founders because that's more my wheelhouse. Um, but I guess the key things to remember are that this journey is incredibly hard but incredibly rewarding. Um, Eventually, I guess to sum it all up, you have to go with your gut in the end. You have to be happy with your decisions. There's a lot of people who will come and give you advice. A lot of it's okay, some of it's terrible, some of it's great. You can go with that if you think it's good quality, or you can, in the end, it's your company. You make the decisions. If you decided to take someone's advice and it ended up horribly, that's on you. That's not on them. Yes, it's kind of on them, but like you have to take responsibility for it. Um, and it goes the other way. If you see loads of people doing one thing and you don't agree with it, then do the other thing, like I am. We're making it so that anyone can share personal details in chat. And every other marketplace like us in the sector right now does not. And we made a conscious decision that that's not a thing that we want to do because we're providing so much more value right now. Now we just need to survive long enough as a company in order to make it worth it, which is what I'm working on now. But yeah, the trust your gut. That's a very good takeaway, I would say.
Awesome. Well, definitely recommend connecting with Gabriel on LinkedIn. And if you're listening to this, you can go into the comments or the podcast notes wherever you're listening, and there will be a link to his LinkedIn profile. Like I said, I recommend connecting with him. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and we'll link to Tutti if you want to go and look through their website and just see all the awesome stuff they're doing there. But Gabriel, is there anything else I could throw in for you? Anything you want to talk about here at the end?
No, I'm all set. I just yeah, I I'm very happy to help young founders if you have a couple questions. I cannot promise I will get back to you quickly because my plate is really piling up with things now, but I will try and help if I can. So feel free to message me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Not that I really check Twitter. Um, and yeah, good luck if you are starting a company or thinking about starting a company. The journey is definitely worth it. It is just a really hard journey, and take time. Don't make mistakes too quickly, or actually no, make mistakes quickly, but then learn from them quickly too, and enjoy it. Yeah. Um, this, to be frank, today has been one of the worst days of my like startup journey for the last year. But I decided to do this interview because I was like, I love sharing positivity, and and you have to snap out of the terrible days and find like a high. So, I was gonna message Brooks and cancel it, but then I was like, no, I need to get positive about startup life again. So, I'm sorry if I was sounded a bit of a downer at the beginning, but I'm yeah, I'm definitely feeling more positive about startup life now. So hopefully that came across. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us, listeners. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate the community that you're becoming a part of here, and all of the insights that we get from guests like you, Gabriel, and from all of the marketplace leaders in our community. You guys are invaluable, and so we're grateful for you, and we hope to see you guys in the next episode.